My husband's face went from smug to white in exactly 3 seconds. I counted. His lawyer froze with his mouth half open, like someone had pressed pause on a remote. His mother, Patricia, who had spent 12 years calling me the help, dropped her Chanel purse on the courtroom floor. And his mistress, Jennifer, sitting in the back row already planning how to spend my money, quietly stood up and walked out without a word. She didn't even look back. Smart girl. She could smell a sinking ship. The judge cleared her throat and repeated the number. $2.3 million in debt, 3 mortgages in default, a pending IRS investigation, and since Mr. Bradley specifically requested full ownership of all marital assets, she paused, he will receive exactly that, along with everything attached. Richard grabbed the edge of the table like the floor had disappeared beneath him. His voice cracked. You knew. This whole time. You knew. I smiled. The first real smile in 3 years. I'm an accountant, Richard. It's literally my job to know. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning. Because you need to understand how we got here. How a woman everyone thought had lost her mind actually played the longest, most patient game of her life. My name is Caroline Webb. I'm 36 years old, and until 2 months ago, I was married to Richard Bradley for 12 years. 12 years of marriage. That's longer than most Hollywood relationships, longer than some small countries have existed, and definitely longer than my patience should have lasted. But I'm a stubborn woman. I get it from my grandmother. I met Richard when I was 22. I'd graduated college with an accounting degree, not because I was some genius, but because I was practical and motivated and really, really wanted to build a stable life. I got a job at Morrison & Price accounting firm as a junior accountant. Minimum salary, maximum spreadsheets, but it was mine. By 24, I'd worked my way up to senior accountant. I was good with details, good with numbers, good with keeping my mouth shut and my eyes open. Richard was 28 when we met at a client event. Charming, ambitious, full of dreams about building a construction empire. He talked about the future, like it was already his, like success was just waiting for him to show up and claim it. He said he was going to build something incredible. I said I'd help him with the books. Romance, right? We got married when I was 24. Our son Nathan came along when I was 25. I kept working at the accounting firm part-time while raising our son, building up my 401k, saving every spare dollar. My grandmother always said a woman should have her own money. Not secret money, she'd clarified, just her own. Something nobody could take. At 26, Richard's business finally took off. He asked me to quit the firm and help him full-time. He needed someone to manage the books, handle clients, coordinate with contractors, someone he could trust completely. So I became his unpaid everything. Bookkeeper, office manager, client liaison, marketing coordinator, event planner. I did it all while raising Nathan, managing our household, and somehow keeping everyone fed and reasonably happy. My official title was wife. My unofficial title was everything else. For 10 years, I poured myself into building Richard's dream. And for 10 years, he got the credit, the awards, the recognition. At every industry event, I was Richard's wife. At every celebration, he thanked his team, his mentors, his vision, but somehow never quite got around to thanking me. Somewhere along the way, things shifted. He started making decisions without consulting me, started staying late for work more and more often, started criticizing little things. The way I dressed, the meals I cooked, my lack of ambition. Lack of ambition. I was running his entire back office for free while raising his son and keeping his life organized. But sure, not ambitious enough. Then 2 months ago, he dropped the bomb. He came home on a Tuesday evening. I was making dinner. His favorite, actually, roast chicken with rosemary potatoes, because I'm apparently a glutton for unappreciated effort. He sat me down at the kitchen table with this look on his face, not sad, not apologetic, just businesslike. I want a divorce, he said. And then, I want the house, the cars, the business, everything. You can keep Nathan. He said it like he was ordering from a menu. I'll have the assets. Hold the child, thanks. Keep Nathan, like our 13-year-old son was a leftover pizza, like he was an inconvenience being graciously allowed to stay with me. I just stared at him. 12 years of marriage, and this was how it ended? At our kitchen table between the salt shaker and the butter dish, like I was just another item he was discarding? What I didn't know in that moment, what I wouldn't find out until later, was that Richard had been planning this for months. He already had a lawyer, Douglas Pemberton, expensive, experienced. He'd been building his exit strategy while I was meal prepping and scheduling his dentist appointments. I'd been blindsided by a man I'd trusted with everything. The next day, his mother showed up, Patricia Bradley, a woman who had treated me like the help for 12 years. She arrived with her perfectly styled hair and her perfectly practiced sympathy face. She patted my hand and told me I should have tried harder to keep him happy. "Men have needs, dear," she said, like she was explaining something complicated to a slow child. "You let yourself go. You focus too much on the child and not enough on your husband. These things happen when a woman forgets her place." Patricia's advice on marriage was always fascinating, considering her own husband had spent most of their marriage on the golf course, specifically to avoid being in the same room as her. But sure, I was the problem. That first week was a blur. Richard moved me to the guest room. He had documents drawn up, settlements proposed, timelines established. Everything was moving so fast, and I felt like I was drowning. Everyone saw a woman whose world had just collapsed, a wife being thrown away after 12 years of service, a victim who didn't see it coming. But here's the thing. What Richard didn't know, what nobody knew, was that I'd found something 3 years ago, something buried in his own financial records, something he thought was hidden forever, and I'd been quietly, patiently preparing ever since. Now, before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every single comment. Thank you. Back to the disaster. Within a week of the announcement, Richard had completely taken control. The guest room became my permanent residence in what used to be our home. My closet shrank from a walk-in to 2 small sections he graciously allowed me to keep. The message was clear. This isn't your house anymore. Within 2 weeks, he started bringing her around. Jennifer Sawyer, 27 years old, worked at his company. Of course she did. She had that Instagram perfect look. Blonde highlights, perfect nails, yoga pants that cost more than my weekly groceries. She walked into my kitchen like she owned it. And then she did something that made my blood turn to ice. She put on my grandmother's apron. My grandmother's apron. The one with the little blue flowers. The one Grandma had worn every Sunday making her famous pot roast. The one she'd given me when I got married, pressing it into my hands and saying, "Every kitchen needs love, Caroline. This apron has seen 50 years of it." Jennifer tied it around her waist and started making smoothies in my blender. She was younger than my marriage, younger than my favorite handbag, but she made amazing smoothies, so I guess that's something. I stood in the doorway and watched. Richard didn't even look embarrassed. He just shrugged like it was nothing. "Jenny's going to be around more," he said. "You should get used to it." Jenny. He called her Jenny, like they were already a family, like I was already gone. Vincent paraded her around like a trophy. They'd sit on my couch, watch my television, eat off my plates. He'd put his arm around her right in front of me, like I was furniture, like I'd already disappeared. The humiliation escalated daily. First, he canceled my personal credit card. "We need to separate finances," he said like he was being reasonable. Then the joint card. Then he suggested I should probably find somewhere else to stay while we sorted things out, my own home, and I was being asked to leave. Patricia came over to help me pack. And by help, I mean she went through my belongings and decided what I deserved to keep. Old clothes, fine. Family photos, some of them. My grandmother's recipe box. She hesitated on that one, like she was considering claiming it for herself. What I was not allowed to take, Any jewelry Richard had bought me over 12 years, any furniture I'd picked out, anything of value. Those were marital assets, Patricia explained, and Richard was entitled to them. She packed my things in garbage bags, not boxes, garbage bags, like I was trash being taken out. "No need for fancy suitcases," she said sweetly. "You won't have anywhere to put them in whatever little apartment you end up in." Through all of this, I had one person I thought I could trust, Monica Chen. We'd been friends since college, 20 years of friendship, through boyfriends, breakups, babies, and everything in between. She was the first person I called after Richard's announcement. She was so supportive, always checking in, always asking how I was holding up, always wanting to know what Richard was saying, what he was planning, how I was feeling. "You deserve so much better," she'd say, squeezing my hand across the coffee shop table. "He's an idiot. You're going to come out of this stronger. I just know it." I believed her. I needed to believe someone was on my side. What I didn't know, what I wouldn't find out until later, was that Monica had been sleeping with Richard for almost a year, my best friend, my confidant. The woman I'd cried to about my failing marriage was the one helping it fail. She'd report back to him after every conversation. Tell him my plans, tell him my fears, tell him exactly how to stay one step ahead of me. 20 years of friendship betrayed for a man who would throw her away just as easily as he threw me away. But I'm getting ahead of myself. 3 years ago, I found everything. Richard had asked me to organize some old files in his home office. Tax documents, he said. Nothing important, just needed them sorted for the accountant. I was good at sorting, good at finding things, good at noticing when numbers didn't add up. And these numbers didn't add up. There was a second set of accounts, hidden in a folder labeled Archive Do Not Use. Payments to a property management company I'd never heard of. Monthly transfers to an account that wasn't connected to the business. Thousands of dollars every month for almost 2 years. I traced the payments. The property management company led to a rental property downtown, a luxury apartment in a building called the Meridian, penthouse level, Riverview, $5,200 a month. My first thought was business investment, tax shelter, something legitimate I just didn't know about. My second thought was, why hide it? I dug deeper, and the deeper I dug, the worse it got. The apartment wasn't the only secret. There were loans, big ones, taken out against the company. $800,000 here, $400,000 there. Money borrowed against equipment, against property, against contracts that hadn't been signed yet. There were gambling debts. I found credit card statements from casinos in Vegas, Atlantic City, online poker sites, tens of thousands of dollars, then hundreds of thousands. There were crypto investments. Richard had apparently decided he was a financial genius in 2021 and put $600,000 of company money into various cryptocurrencies. By the time I found it, the value had dropped to about $45,000, a 92% loss. And there was the apartment, where he took Jennifer, where he took other women before Jennifer, where he lived a whole second life while I was at home raising his son and running his business. Richard wasn't just cheating on me. He was running the company, his father's legacy, into the ground. And he was doing it so recklessly, so arrogantly that he didn't even bother to hide it well. I could have confronted him right then. I could have screamed, cried, thrown things. I could have hired a lawyer and filed for divorce while I still had leverage. But my grandmother taught me something important. She used to say, "The best revenge isn't loud, Caroline. It's patient. You wait until they think they've won, and then you show them they never even understood the game." So I waited. For 3 years, I documented everything. Every transaction, every transfer, every lie. I made copies, digital backups in a cloud account he didn't know about, physical copies in a safety deposit box at a bank across town. I created spreadsheets with dates, amounts, sources. I built a case so airtight that no lawyer could break it. And I did one more thing. I set up a trust fund for Nathan. Quietly, legally, untouchable. I moved $520,000 into it over 3 years. Money from accounts Richard had forgotten about. Money from investments he didn't track. Money that was technically mine from my years at the accounting firm. Whatever happened to me, whatever happened to Richard, my son would be protected. Then I waited some more. I waited while Richard criticized my cooking. I waited while Patricia called me worthless. I waited while Jennifer wore my grandmother's apron and made smoothies in my kitchen. I waited while Monica pretended to be my friend and reported everything back to Richard. And when Richard finally asked for the divorce, when he demanded everything, I smiled and said, okay. The court date arrived on a gray Tuesday morning. Richard showed up in his best suit, hair freshly cut, confidence radiating off him like cologne. Douglas Pemberton carried a leather briefcase that probably cost more than my car. Patricia sat in the gallery wearing pearls and a smile of anticipation. Jennifer was there too, back row, trying to look casual, already mentally redecorating my house. And Monica was there, sitting near Patricia, my best friend there to watch me lose everything. I sat quietly with my lawyer, Ruth Chen, no relation to Monica, thankfully. I wore a simple navy dress, no jewelry except my grandmother's pearls. The proceedings started smoothly. Douglas presented the settlement agreement. Richard confirmed he wanted full ownership of all marital assets, the house, the company, everything. The judge reviewed the paperwork, asked standard questions. Everything was moving exactly as Richard expected. Then Ruth stood up. Your Honor, before this settlement is finalized, I need to enter several documents into the record. Douglas frowned. We have a signed agreement. What documents? Ruth handed a thick folder to the judge. Financial records that my client compiled during her time as the company's bookkeeper. Records that Mr. Bradley may not have shared with his counsel. The judge opened the folder, started reading. Her eyebrows rose slowly. Richard shifted in his seat. What is this? What records? The judge looked up. Mr. Bradley, were you aware that your company currently has $2.3 million in outstanding debt? The color drained from Richard's face. Those numbers are old. We restructured. These are dated from last month. The judge turned a page. There are also 3 mortgages against the company property, all in default. A pending IRS investigation regarding unreported income, and she paused. Approximately $340,000 in gambling debts across multiple casinos. She turned another page. There also appears to be $600,000 in cryptocurrency investments that have lost 92% of their value, and a luxury apartment downtown that has been maintained for the past 3 years at a cost of over $180,000, paid for with company funds. Douglas grabbed for the folder. His face went gray. Your Honor, I was not informed of any of this. I need time to review. Mr. Pemberton, your client specifically requested full ownership of all marital assets. These debts are attached to those assets. The IRS investigation is attached to those assets. She looked at Richard directly. Mr. Bradley, you asked for everything. The court is prepared to give you exactly that, along with everything attached. That's when Jennifer stood up. She didn't say a word. She just gathered her purse, her phone, her jacket, and walked out of the courtroom. Her heels clicked on the marble floor. She didn't look back. Jennifer's exit was faster than her entrance into my marriage. At least she was consistent. Richard turned to me, his voice cracking. You knew! This whole time you knew! I met his eyes, calm, steady. 3 years of patience distilled into a single moment. I'm an accountant, Richard. It's literally my job to know. The judge finalized the settlement within the hour. Richard got the house and its 3 mortgages in default. He got the company and its $2.3 million in debt. He got the cars and their liens. He got everything he asked for. I got a modest settlement, $65,000. I got full custody of Nathan. I got my grandmother's pearls, her recipe box, her apron back, and I got freedom. I stood up, smoothed my dress, picked up my purse. Then I looked at Richard one last time. He was slumped in his chair, papers scattered in front of him, his whole world collapsing. "You said you wanted everything except Nathan," I said quietly. "I gave you exactly what you asked for." I walked out of that courtroom without looking back. In the hallway, I could hear Richard's voice rising, yelling at Douglas, demanding to know how this happened, threatening lawsuits. Douglas's calm response: "I told you to get an audit. I have it in writing. You refused." I passed Patricia on my way out. She was leaning against the wall, phone pressed to her ear, face pale. Probably calling her financial advisor. Probably realizing that her son's empire was about to become her problem. She saw me and opened her mouth. For the first time in 12 years, Patricia Bradley had nothing to say. "Have a good day, Patricia," I said pleasantly. "Love the pearls." I didn't look back. The collapse happened faster than I expected. Within 2 weeks, Jennifer had moved out of the apartment, packed her things in the middle of the night, left a note that said, "This isn't what I signed up for." The luxury apartment sat empty. The smoothie blender sat unused. Within a month, Richard tried to sell the house. But when you owe more than something is worth, there are no buyers. Just banks calling about missed payments and realtors suggesting short sales. Within 2 months, the business started defaulting. Vendors filed lawsuits. The line of credit was frozen. The company that Richard's father had spent 30 years building was crumbling into dust. Within 3 months, Richard was meeting with bankruptcy attorneys. The man who'd once bragged about his empire was now calculating which assets he could protect from creditors. The answer was almost nothing. Patricia's perfect son was calling family members asking for loans, showing up at relatives' houses with excuses and explanations. Nobody knew about the debt. Caroline must have hidden it somehow. I was tricked. But the documents told a different story. The mortgages were in his name. The loans were in his name. The gambling debts, the crypto losses, the secret apartment. All his choices, all his signatures. I heard Patricia's Christmas newsletter that year was very short. Richard is exploring new opportunities. Yes, opportunities in debt restructuring. Monica called me about a week after the hearing. Her voice was shaking. "I had no idea things were this bad. I'm so sorry, Caroline. I never meant for... I thought Richard and I..." She couldn't finish, couldn't bring herself to admit what she'd done. I didn't answer, didn't respond, didn't give her the closure she was looking for. Some bridges aren't meant to be repaired. Some friendships don't deserve a second chance. 20 years of history, betrayed for a wink and empty promises from a man who used everyone around him. She tried calling 3 more times, then stopped. I imagine she's still waiting for Richard to notice her. She'll be waiting a long time. Patricia tried a different approach, going through Nathan. "Tell your mother I didn't know about the money problems. Tell her I'm sorry for how I treated her. Tell her I want to talk." Nathan, my wonderful, smart, observant son, looked at his grandmother, the woman who had packed his mother's belongings in garbage bags, who had called his mother worthless, who had sided with his father without a single question. And he said, "Mom's busy building her life. She doesn't have time for excuses." Patricia wanted forgiveness. I wanted peace. Guess which one of us got what we wanted? Nathan finally understood everything, not because I explained it, but because he figured it out himself. He saw the court documents. He heard his father's excuses. He watched Jennifer leave, watched Patricia scramble, watched the whole facade collapse. One evening, about a month after the divorce, he sat with me in my small apartment, the one with the sage green kitchen, the one with the secondhand furniture and the boxes finally unpacked. "You waited 3 years," he said quietly. "You knew this whole time and you just waited." "I wanted to make sure you were protected," I told him. "Whatever happened between your father and me, I needed to know you'd be okay." "The trust fund," he said. $520,000. safe and untouchable. He was quiet for a moment. Then he hugged me. Really hugged me. The kind of hug I hadn't gotten from my 13-year-old son in months. The kind that said, "I understand." The kind that said, "I'm proud of you." 13-year-old boys don't usually hug their mothers voluntarily. I knew I'd done something right. My $65,000 settlement went toward getting established. First month's rent, security deposit, basic furniture that wasn't falling apart. It wasn't luxury, but it was stability. The trust fund stayed exactly where it was. Nathan's future, college, maybe a first home someday, a safety net that nobody could take from him. And me? I started my own accounting firm. The dream I'd put on hold when I was 26 to help Richard build his empire. I was finally building my own. I started small. My first real client was a woman named Sandra, 52 years old, just ending a 28-year marriage. She was standing in her empty new apartment, looking lost when she asked me, "How do you start over?" I thought about it for a moment. One room at a time, one number at a time, one day at a time. We painted her kitchen sage green. She cried when she saw it. "Happy tears," she said, "the color of new beginnings." About 3 months after the divorce was finalized, Richard showed up at my apartment. I barely recognized him. He'd lost weight, not the healthy kind, dark circles under his eyes. His suit was wrinkled. His watch was gone, probably sold to cover some debt. He looked like a man who'd been through a war and lost. He stood in my doorway, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "I didn't know it was this bad," he said. His voice was hoarse. "I made mistakes. I know that now. But I didn't mean for any of this to happen." I leaned against my doorframe and looked at him. Really looked at him. This man I'd loved for almost half my life. This man who'd thrown me away like garbage. This man who was now drowning in the consequences of his own choices. "Can we talk?" he asked. "Maybe we can figure something out. I don't know. Maybe we could..." He couldn't even finish the sentence. Couldn't bring himself to ask for what he actually wanted. Help. My help. After everything. "You asked for everything except Nathan," I said calmly. "I gave you exactly what you wanted." "Caroline, please." "Goodbye, Richard." I closed the door. He stood in the hallway for 10 minutes. I know, because I watched through the peephole while eating ice cream. Best show I'd ever seen. 5 stars. Would watch again. That evening, after Nathan went to bed, I sat in my small living room and looked at my grandmother's photo on the shelf. The recipe box was next to it. The apron hung in my sage green kitchen. The things Patricia had almost taken. The things that mattered most. "You were right about everything, Grandma," I said quietly. "Keep your own money, know your worth, and never let anyone make you feel small." The apartment was quiet. Small. Nothing like the house I'd lived in for 12 years. But it was mine. Every paint color, every piece of furniture, every decision, mine. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I was free. Thank you so much for watching. More of my most gripping stories are already on your screen. Click one now and don't miss the best part. You'll love it. See you in the next one.